Hi, my name is Claire. One evening, my phone buzzed with a voicemail from my parents. Their words cut deep. You're out of the family business. Don't bother coming back. I didn't argue. I only whispered, understood. Growing up in Boston, the smell of sawdust and fresh concrete was my version of perfume. Our family business, Carter Construction, wasn't just a company. It was the legacy my father, Thomas Carter, was obsessed with building. I loved it from the moment I could walk, holding his hand at a job site, my tiny yellow hard hat slipping over my eyes. He'd point to the steel beams and say, "We build things that last, Claire. We build the future." I believed I was part of that we. While other kids went to summer camp, I learned how to read blueprints. I wasn't forced to do it. I was drawn to the honesty of the work. You couldn't fake a solid foundation. My sister Emily was different. She hated the dirt and preferred art galleries and boutique shops. My parents saw her as delicate, a porcelain doll. I was the sturdy one, the one who didn't mind getting her hands dirty. This difference defined our childhoods. When I was 12, I spent a summer creating a new inventory system for the supply warehouse that saved the company thousands. My father patted me on the head and said, "Good work, kid." That was it. A month later, Emily won second place in a local poetry contest. My parents threw a party with their friends and business associates. My father raised a glass and announced, "To my Emily, the creative genius of the family." Everyone applauded her. I stood in the corner feeling invisible. My achievement earned a quiet pat on the head. Hers was celebrated under chandeliers. That pattern never changed. For college, Emily went to study art history in Paris on our parents' dime. "It's an investment in her spirit," my mother said. I wanted to study civil engineering at a state university an hour away. "Get a scholarship," my father told me, adding that a part-time job would build character. So I worked 30 hours a week at a coffee shop while they wired Emily money for a weekend trip to Italy. I thought my hard work was the price of admission to the legacy he was always talking about. I was wrong. It was just expected. After graduation, I went straight to work at Carter Construction. Emily came back from Paris and was given the title of creative director. She picked out paint colors for the lobby. I was given a cubicle and the title of project assistant. I was on site at 6 a.m., managing crews and negotiating with city inspectors. My father treated me like any other employee, maybe even harder. "No special treatment," he'd say. But Emily got special treatment every day. She was family. I was just staff. The sacrifices we make for family are supposed to matter. In my family, my sacrifices were treated like loose threads, easily pulled and forgotten. 5 years ago, a recession hit the construction industry like a tidal wave. Big projects stopped. Clients defaulted. Suddenly, our firm was bleeding money. Bankruptcy wasn't a possibility. It was a certainty. My father, who had always seemed invincible, looked terrified. Emily's solution was to rebrand. She spent a week designing a new logo while the company was sinking. I knew a logo wouldn't stop the bleeding. We needed cash, and we needed it yesterday. The weekly payroll was due, and we were short. These were men and women I'd worked alongside for years. They had families and mortgages. I couldn't let them down, so I did the one thing I could. I went to the bank and, without telling my parents, took out a second mortgage on my apartment. I drained my 401k and every penny I had in savings. It felt like my entire future was on that one piece of paper. I funneled the money into the company account, masking it as a client prepayment. I didn't want a thank you. I just wanted the company to survive. That money bought us a month. I started working 18-hour days, living on black coffee. I took over accounting, renegotiated with suppliers, and chased down small repair jobs. Anything to keep cash flowing. The workers saw it. They started coming to me with problems, not my father. They trusted me. Slowly, we started to turn a corner. I secured a stable contract with a local university, then another with a hospital. These weren't the flashy projects my father loved, but they were lifelines. After a year, the company was stable again. At a family dinner, my father raised his glass. I thought for a fleeting second that this was the moment he would finally acknowledge what I'd done. Instead, he looked at Emily. "I want to make a toast," he said, "to my daughter Emily. When we were on the brink, her unwavering optimism and brilliant rebranding ideas kept our spirits up. She reminded us of what Carter Construction stands for. She saved this company." I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. My mother was beaming. Emily gave a modest little shrug, soaking up the praise. She had designed a logo. I had sold my future. I didn't say a word. They hadn't just ignored my sacrifice. They had given the credit for it to someone else. They had erased me from my own story. My work was expected, but my worth was invisible. The voicemail came on a Tuesday night. I was at my desk, long after everyone else had gone home, finalizing a bid for a new downtown library. I was exhausted but hopeful. My phone buzzed. It was a notification for a new voicemail. No missed call. My father's voice filled the silence, cold and clipped. Claire, the board had a meeting this evening. We've decided to go in a new direction. Your position has been eliminated. You're out of the family business. Your sister will handle everything from now on. There was a pause, then my mother's voice, sickeningly sweet. It's for the best, honey. You've been working so hard. You'll thank us later. Don't bother coming back to the office. We'll have your things couriered. The line went dead. I sat there in the dark, the phone still pressed to my ear. You're out. Your sister will handle everything. They didn't even have the courage to say it to my face. After everything, I was dismissed in a 30-second voicemail. My first instinct was hot, searing anger. But then a strange, chilling calm washed over me. This wasn't a surprise. It was an ending I should have seen coming. I had been a tool, and now that the machine was running smoothly again, the tool was being put away. My hands were perfectly steady. I didn't cry. The part of me that would have cried had been hollowed out long ago. Arguing wouldn't change anything. It would only give them the satisfaction of seeing me broken. I took a deep breath, leaned forward, and whispered to the empty office. Understood. I didn't pack up my desk. I replayed their words until the hurt hardened into fuel. I walked over to the large filing cabinets that lined the back wall. My father insisted on a hard copy of every important document. I knew this system better than anyone. I started pulling files with surgical precision. I gathered every major contract signed in the last 5 years, every partnership agreement I had negotiated. And then I found what I was looking for. It was buried in a thick binder for a joint venture on a massive hospital expansion, one of the first big contracts that had signaled our recovery. The contract was 100 pages long. My father, desperate for the deal, had told me to just handle it. I had. I had read every line, and on page 87 I had added a clause. It stipulated that the contract's future phases were contingent on the direct oversight of the lead project manager named in the addendum. That project manager was me. He had signed it without reading the fine print. He had forgotten. I hadn't. That clause was the key, but it wasn't the whole plan. Years ago, on the advice of a lawyer, I had registered a small consulting business, Claire Carter Consulting. It was a simple LLC, a legal shield of self-preservation. When I brought in new clients, I would draft the preliminary agreements under my firm's name to create a paper trail of my value. As my family continued to sideline me, I took it a step further. For a few key clients, the hospital, the university, a government agency, I kept the contract under Claire Carter Consulting. Carter Construction was listed as the primary subcontractor. It was all legal. My father never looked at the details. He just saw the money coming in. He didn't realize he was a subcontractor on his own jobs. These contracts were worth tens of millions. They were the company's future, and they were all tied directly to me. I spent the rest of the night making copies. By sunrise, I had a thick stack of documents in my briefcase. They had pushed me out. They had no idea I was about to take the lifeboats with me. The next board meeting was a week later. I wasn't invited, but I walked in at 10 o'clock sharp. My father sat at the head of the table, my mother beside him, and Emily at his right hand, in the seat that used to be mine. Emily smirked. Claire, you weren't invited. My father's face hardened. You're done here, Claire. Security will see you out. I ignored him and placed my briefcase on the mahogany table. I pulled out a thick, bound folder and slid it in front of him. Funny, I said, my voice even and clear. Because without me, your most important project stopped tomorrow. Silence fell. He opened the folder reluctantly. The first page was a summary of our top projects. What is this? He grumbled. A list of your accomplishments? It's time to move on. Keep reading, I said softly. He flipped the pages, his eyes scanning copies of the contracts. I saw the exact moment the blood drained from his face. His confident posture sagged. He was looking at the signature pages. The name at the bottom wasn't Carter Construction. It was Claire Carter Consulting, Emily snatched a page from the folder. "This is fraud," she stammered. I almost smiled. "No, Emily, this is business. It's called a prime contractor agreement. It's all perfectly legal. You would know that if you'd ever bothered to read the fine print." Panic flashed across my mother's face. My father stood up, pointing a shaking finger at me. "You did this behind my back!" "No," I said, my voice never rising. "You just never paid attention. You were too busy giving Emily credit for my work to bother asking how it got done." The power in the room had shifted completely. The board members weren't looking at my father anymore. They were looking at me. One of them, an investor named Mr. Harrison, asked respectfully, "Miss Carter, what exactly does this mean for us?" I looked at my family, at their crumbling facades of power. They had underestimated me. The collapse was faster than I could have imagined. The board, realizing the company's most valuable assets were tied to me, turned on my father. Emily tried to fight back with accusations, but her words were empty. When the clients were contacted, they confirmed it. Their trust was with me. My parents' calls, filled with threats and then desperate pleas, went unanswered. I sent them one formal offer through my lawyer. I proposed a buyout, not of the company, but of its workforce. I offered to hire every single employee at their current salary under my new firm. The workers, who had watched my dedication for years, didn't hesitate. Within a week, almost the entire staff had resigned from Carter Construction and signed on with me. Without its contracts and its workforce, the company was just an empty shell. Emily, the new leader, was left with a fancy office, a new logo, and no one to manage. The empire she had inherited was built on sand, and it crumbled. I didn't gloat. The victory wasn't in their failure. It was in my freedom. I set up my new office in a modest building across town. It didn't have a fancy boardroom, but it was mine. We finished the hospital wing ahead of schedule and secured a new, larger contract with the university. I made sure every worker got a raise. Their loyalty was my real legacy. Sometimes I drive past the old Carter Construction headquarters. The sign is still there, faded. The parking lot is mostly empty. My father was forced into retirement. Emily, I heard, is trying to reinvent herself as a consultant. I built my own future, not in their shadow, but in my own light. They thought their voicemail was an ending. They had no idea it was my beginning. Would you have confronted them immediately after that voicemail, or stayed silent like I did? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget, like this story, subscribe, and share if you believe quiet revenge is the sweetest justice.